Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to Joygasm, a video game and movie podcast. I am Russ, and he is Steve, and Embracer Group owns Middle-earth at episode 284 today, August 18th, 2022. We are going to be having a little bit of the howdy doody banter back and forthage before going right into our topic of the day, which is Embracer Group buys Lord of the Rings. Before we go any further, make sure you throw a whole lot of money at that subscribe button and acquire that notification bell. That way you will not miss a single solitary episode of Joygasm. It drops once a week, every week.
You should just said swing your elvish blade at the subscribe button.
Ooh, I like that, Steve. We should start doing focus groups before we do this and exchange different types of ideas as to how to very cleverly introduce those different necessary promotional items.
A pre-meeting before our meeting.
It's almost like a pre-show to the pre-show prep meeting.
That's right.
Steve, I know it has been a while since we have been able to catch up with each other because there has been just so many different things, items of interest that we have gotten right into, but you know, I think it has stirred the cauldron of curiosity. As to what you have been up to over the past several weeks there, Steve.
That was me stirring the cauldron.
I like that.
I was going to dust some spices in there too. Make you sneeze.
Very nice.
Let's see. Well,
I'll stick like a big straw in his cauldron and just blow bubbles.
Stop it. It's rude.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think the last time we actually had a howdy doody time was when I beat the Ring of Elden, the elderly ring.
Now, how long ago was that?
Rust, it was about a month, I would say. About a month-ish.
About a month-ish. Gotcha.
So I'll say after that, I went back and played as much as I really could, or I guess that was kind of worth playing, of the DLC, Forza, Hot Wheels.
Excellent.
Because at some point, I mean, I basically got to where I think you are, which is you get to the last license. It's like the expert level, right?
Yes.
But there's nothing new to do.
Yeah, they basically want you to go through and perfect all of the unlocked stuff.
Which I kind of didn't think that was very fun. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a mindset, right? Where as you go through unlocking the various licenses, then you get like all these different new opportunities to race and have these different types of events that go on, that sort of thing. But then once you get to the expert mode, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, no, we're not going to unlock anything new. We're simply going to just have you go through and be OCD perfectionist and basically get the best you could possibly get. Full 3 stars on events, first place everywhere, all the good stuff, Steve.
So I just didn't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you did finish it at the end. No, not you as in like you.
I was going to say, yeah.
But like, at the when you get the license before the last license, they do kind of show you like this kind of celebratory fireworks, and you kind of park and like, oh, well, that was great. I had a fabulous time, sort of thing. I'm like, okay, I think I'm done. And I can go around and do whatever. So I just went back to Mexico. And decided to keep racing there. Right?
It's interesting when you go back. Just there is a notable difference in terms of locale. Obviously, I mean, you have the plastic orange tracks and stuff, but it is interesting how
noticeable
there is more of a fantasy element to the Hot Wheels, despite the fact that the main territories are still in that same vein of being in Mexico. But then you go back to Mexico itself and you're like, oh, wow, okay, this is great.
I still default to the Forza Horizon 3 Hot Wheels, Rosa. Whoa. Even after all the play, and that's what I still set to where I was, which is I'm glad they did it. I'm glad they released it on next gen. I'm glad I played it, glad I bought it. Still defer to Forza Horizon 3.
They really did a bang up job on that. That's the one in Australia.
That's right.
And it was so fun to be able to go through that. I mean, honestly, I love them all. I love 3, 4, and 5. I think that they've just been on this amazing roll.
Yeah.
As of late. Yes.
Right. Russ.
Enunciate. It's helpful. What else you been doing?
Well, I've been progressing through New Game Plus. I just did the stream last time. New Game Plus of Elden Ring. So I'm getting to the part.
Journey numero dos.
Yeah, that's right. And now the enemies are getting harder.
Naturally.
Like I found another game. Yeah.
and the enemies have gotten easier.
I got to, I'm like at the, I could put my knee wherever I want.
Stop,
you know
man,
what?
spreading
I'm
under the table.
trying to turn or what, just to face you and not twist my body that much. Just like, be Gumby here.
You are wearing green, just saying.
I noticed that after I said it. Wasn't going to say anything. And then you did.
I did.
So I'm right at the Volcano Manor again.
Nice.
And I defeated the magma worm, but I was not taking as much damage off him as I thought I would.
Well, the main question, though, is as you've been progressing through this new journey, have you died at all against these bosses, or are you just going through and bulldozing through all of them?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I'm just laying waste to him, Russ.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am. And it feels good. I mean, it really does feel good. I feel like, oh, yes, this is, as many times as I died in the game, I'm just like, yes, I'm ready. Come and get me.
Yeah, and then, imagine there is quite the contrast.
Oh, and then they say all the same things to me. Oh, tarnished. I'm like, oh, yeah. Daddy's not afraid anymore. But I tell you, I started increasing my intelligence.
Well, that's good, Steve.
And
it's good to be able to increase one's intelligence.
Going to increase my intelligence. I increased it by 1.
By 1.
And
cameras up there, Steve.
Like, which one is it?
Steve's like, and I increased it by 1.
The camera on my phone.
What are you looking at over there?
So, but after I did that, I went back and I thought, okay, everything I want to use is like with faith or arcane. So I'm like, well, can I take that point back? No, I can't. Terrible. So I think my dexterity is at 80 and my strength is at 85. And then my intelligence is about 16. Everything else is not really worth mentioning, Russ.
Yes. A little low on the totem pole. Yes. Well, apparently it's not causing you any kind of issues, though, considering how you've been making your way through it. But yeah, would you say that you're having as much fun on your second go as the first time?
I'm having definite fun. There's not nearly as much of a sense of like fear. Like, what's around that corner? Oh no! Run away for your life! Run away!
Find a happy place. Find a happy place.
So there's not much of that.
Yeah.
But then again, there's basically, there's little discovery. There still is discovery. I'm finding stuff that I hadn't found the first go through. I'm still can't really use a lot of stuff. I'm finding spells, some other weapons, some ashes of war, that sort of thing. So, I mean, there is new stuff to find.
Good.
But, to me, there's not really a whole lot of sense in going through all the catacombs all over again.
Yeah, I remember you were saying that before.
I just basically want to go farm in a good place again and get stronger, quicker, take care of the bad guy. I want to just purposely do a not good ending.
Speaking of the catacombs, I remember the first playthrough that you did, you also did not make it a point to like go out and venture and discover every type of cave or catacomb or whatever, simply because you just felt like it wasn't worth your time, so on. And
there were instances where like, oh, you got to go through all this scarlet rot, or you got to go through all this poison, and I just didn't really have the life for it, or the health points,
the vigor,
yes.
And
so
much vigor.
I don't know. I just kind of didn't really want to do it.
Yes.
Now I just don't care. I don't really have anything to live or die for. I'm like, start over. I don't have,
Yeah.
So plus, my health is a lot more than it is now.
Sure.
But one thing I was not doing last time was I thought that there was like an only a set like finite little amount of these stone sword keys. Mm-hmm. And so I'd get to an area where like, oh, I put a stone sword key in there. And I'm like, like,
no.
Like these three I'm keeping for something special towards the end of the game. And my friends are like, no, you can buy those.
Well, and that's what I was just about to say was that I ended up going around to all the different merchants that I had discovered and buy up all of the swordstone keys that they have. Because I mean, you can accumulate a pretty big heap of swordstone keys just from that alone.
Right.
Yeah.
So every little place I can use one of those, I'm using it.
Oh, well, that's good, Steve.
But the last thing was that there were places that I found before and forgot to mark them. Like I wanted to go back. And I'm like, and I didn't realize that you could put a little place marker on there. I mean, I know you could put like a locator like pin.
Yeah.
And I just didn't for whatever reason, because if I was looking around and hear the little compass at the top, then there would be too many lines. I'm like, I don't even know what all that stuff is for.
That is always funny. Like I got a little too overzealous with like putting little like check, or I don't even know what they're like waypoints, I guess.
Yeah.
Those
Pins.
blue waypoints. And so, I had the same problem where like I'm looking at my compass at the top and there's like all these blue vertical lines. I'm like, oh no, which one I go to? I'm just trying to go east.
That's only what I go to.
Yeah.
Man, where's that blue line in the distance over there? Just keep running off a cliff.
I could just imagine like during the creation of the game, like before they did a lot of QA testing, maybe they had like 20 options for waypoints and like it was so chaotic up there. They're like, okay, we've got to put a limit on this. Let's only put like 6, which I think was a very good move on that behalf.
Yes. I guess lastly, Russ.
Yes.
Did I tell you I watched The Terminal List?
You did. Actually, you have mentioned to me on a couple of occasions that I should start watching that. Is that on Amazon Prime?
It is on Prime.
Okay.
And it is prime viewing material, Russ.
I was actually talking to our buddy Billy Bob Tyler, who has also watched the show, and he too. I mean, he had nothing but great things to say about it. So now that I've heard it from 2 sources, I have no excuse. I need to check this show out.
Check it out, Russ. Put it on the old TV up there.
Put it on the old boob tube.
And then lastly. What did we watch? No, I just forgot it. Okay, yes, we watched we watched Jungle Cruise.
Oh, with the Dwayne Johnson?
Yes.
And Emily Blunt, right?
Yes.
Yes. How was it?
Not bad.
Not bad. It looked like it was one of those like fun romp through for once kind of things.
Yeah. Wife had a good time, so that's all that matters.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I'm glad, Steve.
What about you?
I've had a number of things actually I've been looking forward to talking to you about.
Keep it brief, Russ.
Well, no.
I'm just kidding.
As you can all see, we now have our Joygasm mini tower flags to provide a little more, showmanship to the studio. So it's a lot of fun, a lot more robust in addition to
that.
Exactly. Joygasm tumblers, which Stevavitch is slurping at the moment. So that's been a lot of fun.
It's a nice color.
It is a nice color. It's kind of funny how they're, surprisingly our branding colors. But one of the other things that's really exciting is that I would say about a month ago, I received a new statue from J&D Studios, 1/3 scale statue of Catwoman from Batman: The Dark Knight Rises. So
I've been waiting on that one.
for a while. But it's Anne Hathaway. And I will have out there, as well as you.
What?
Over there. But no, I actually recently did another Out of the Box, a Joygasm unboxing Out of the Box episode number 2, which may actually be available on our Joygasm YouTube channel by the time this episode of Joygasm goes live. It's going to kind of depend on how much time I have over the weekend to edit the thing. But really, really fun. Just a little sneak peek of my reaction to it. I mean, it looks fantastic. There were a couple of like concerns I had initially because some of the folks on various statue forums that I go on to, they've received their Catwoman, but the head was broken off. And so that was something that like I was kind of, oh man, I hope this doesn't happen to me. Thankfully, it did not. Violent. So I was very relieved and grateful for that.
Right.
But at the same time, I just feel so bad for the other collectors. We're like, I mean, these statues are not cheap, and plus it takes forever. I mean, it comes over from Korea, where they're made, and the artists over at J&D Studios. Fantastic. It's so crazy to look at their approach to making statues, specifically within the portraits, because in the portraits, they make it with medical grade silicone. So it's different than that of polystone in the sense that, a lot of the statues I collect are made of polystone. So it has that hardness, right? You like feel the head, and it's just, it's that hard statue kind of material. Medical grade silicone is actually flexible. Like if you were to like poke Anne Hathaway in the cheek, you'd actually have like real skin. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, they did a really, really nice job. And I definitely encourage all of our viewers out there to check that out because it's a lot of fun. I did some lighting tests with it to see like if I could get some kind of movie-esque cinematic lighting going with it. And overall, the detail on it is terrific, Steve.
Did you include a bit of the movie in there like you did with the Joker there, was?
Well, I'm still editing it. I was planning on perhaps putting a little memorable clip from the film, yes, to get people all excited and charged up. Did you like how I did that for the Joker?
I did. I did.
Yeah, the very first Joygasm unboxing episode, I did the Heath Ledger Joker 1/3 scale from J&D Studios, which again, they have been hitting it out of the park. It's the craziest thing because this is I think pretty much the first statue company that like when they show you the prototype, the production piece is just as good, if not in some ways, maybe even a little better, which is crazy because normally like you see the prototype and like the prototype is the best it's ever going to get. Like you, when you get to the production piece, you're kind of like, oh, it looks like it's just a little bit less in quality as the prototype. Because I mean, the prototype, you have all of your star artists working on it. They want to make it as good as possible.
It's kind of like when you go to the restaurant and you're like, oh, order this. Look how beautiful it is. You're like, I'll take it. And it's like, it's the cook on his worst day. Here's your food. You're like, that doesn't look much like the picture.
Doesn't look like the, what is
Can
this?
I get my money back? No. Guess I'll keep me alive then.
Yeah, exactly. Now, when it comes to Elden Ring, I, as you know, finally beat Elden Ring myself.
I know, Russ.
Since we're talking about like little sneak peeks and whatnot, we're going to have an upcoming episode of Joygasm where we're going to give our official review of the game.
Finally.
We did, yes, finally.
Even though it's like 4 months later and everyone else has beat the game, this is the review you're going to want to hear.
It's true.
Right?
It's very true. It is true indeed. We did give an Elden Ring Impressions episode
that was
several months ago, but that was like when we only put about 15 hours or something into the game.
Like that,
The very beginning of the game, yes. Yeah. So definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking about all aspects of the game with you. We're also hoping that maybe Nick will join us as well. He's also a huge Elden Ring fan, has also beaten the game, and it'll just be great to have like a round robin style review of that process. Question for you.
What?
Have you seen the movie trailer, or I guess it's a TV show. I don't think it's a movie. It's like on Hulu or something. I can't remember. Maybe it's Netflix. It's called Blonde or Blondie. I think it's Blonde. But it's Ana de Armas as...
yeah, it sounds familiar. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have.
Yeah, she plays Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And Adrian Brody's in it too. Like they've got some big names in it. But anyway, I haven't seen it yet. I can't remember which platform it's on off the top of my head. I want to say it's Netflix.
I want to say it's Netflix too.
But what was interesting was like, first of all, like she looks just like Marilyn Monroe, at least from like the movies I've seen or like little clips of her. I've seen that sort of thing. There is one thing though that I picked up right away, which is that her Cuban accent really comes through as she's Marilyn Monroe. And I don't think Marilyn Monroe had a Cuban accent. So, that is something that I was like, they probably should have had some, vocal coaches, on set or something to kind of like she totally had the inflections down, like in terms of like, oh, I'm Marilyn Monroe. I'm so breathy. You know, she had that, but the Cuban accent was coming in too. And it's like, oh, I don't think that's 100% accurate.
There was a movie I watched recently. I didn't really, care that much for it. It was called House of Gucci.
Oh, I heard about that.
Al Pacino was in it.
Okay, but you didn't like it that much.
It was okay. It just kind of left you feeling meh at the end of the movie. So, whatever. Anyway, so what's her face is in it? The singer, the Lady Gaga.
Yes.
Isn't it? She's plays one of the main characters.
Yep.
And she is Italian. But the dialect that they wanted to use in the movie, she don't get.
Yes.
And so she, at some point, like certain words she uses, sounds very Italian, like old school Italian. Mm-hmm. And then she starts to sound like Russian throughout halfway of the film. You're like, how does, I don't know. I was seeing some stuff afterward when she was on like talk shows and she was saying like she was trying her best to use, coaches and whatnot. But I mean, it definitely sounds Russian. What is this? Like, you know, a different country or something? I thought we were in Italy.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because there have been multiple instances of that throughout the decades of different movie stars who are doing an accent, and sometimes it just kind of goes in a different direction. You're like, whoa.
Mel Gibson and Braveheart.
Yes. Yes. But no, other than that, and that's why I just figured I'd ask to know because other than the accent portion, I mean, the show looks really interesting. I mean, the way that they've approached it, it looks like it does the whole like, what was the personal life of Marilyn Monroe versus like, being in front of the cameras, and what kind of relationships did she have, and what drove her to, all of a sudden have her life be ended so soon, and that sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it was very interesting. Lastly, though, after seeing the teaser announcement trailer for John Wick 4, I was totally in the mood to watch John Wick. So I ended up watching both John Wick 2 and John Wick 3. But what was funny was that I know I own these films, but I couldn't find them. And so I was kind of playing this whole like, is it on Xbox library? No. Do I have it on 4K DVD? No. Is it on Amazon Prime? No. Like I was having to like go through like all these different platforms. Eventually I ended up remembering that I had John Wick Chapter 3 on my iPhone with my iPhone, because I have certain movies downloaded to my iPhone from like the iTunes store. So like that was John Wick 3, and then John Wick 2 was what you got me. You bought me that, and so I was able to watch that via DVD and stuff. So it was just really funny. But what was also equally as just, annoyingly amusing is the fact that I still don't know where I put John Wick 1. So I'm like,
I think I know where it is. Because you showed it to me. I think it's on your Xbox hard drive.
Oh, is it?
I think it's like on your, not this one, but like an Xbox.
Xbox One X?
One. No, I think just the one.
Oh, wow.
Because you didn't have your X yet.
Well, that's surprising because, I mean, typically that's more of a server thing. Like you log into your profile, it loads all the stuff.
Or, okay, then it's probably on your external hard drive.
I'll have to look again. Because I did look, I didn't see it. Doesn't mean it's not there. I may have missed it, but no, it was just funny how utterly scattered everything is. I just need to get like a nice physical copy of all of them that I can just easily get to.
It's funny you said that because we wanted to watch John Wick Chapter 1 also.
Really? Did you end up watching it?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
I think it's actually available on Amazon. But we're like, we don't want to pay like $14 to see it, so we'll just wait.
Makes sense.
What are you gonna do?
One ring to rule them all in the darkness. Buy them? Topic of the day. Our topic of the day is the Embracer Group apparent purchase of Lord of the Rings.
You know what you sounded like just then?
Who?
You sounded like a radio DJ when they like try and tell you a bunch of stuff when the song's already starting to play, like right before that the singer starts to say like, okay, let's go. Thanks for listening.
Yeah,
like, whoa, wow, he really got a lot. I didn't understand a word.
my timing on that was not my best. Yeah, no, it was really funny. You're absolutely right. You listen to those different radio stations, and those DJs totally try to like be all like on the suave and just, you know, like they'll start they'll keep talking as your song is playing, which is I find to be annoying anyway, because if it's a song I like, I'm like, dude, stop talking so I can enjoy the song. But they're like, PRK, we'll see you later. And then it's like literally right up to the point where like the musical artist starts to sing, but sometimes yeah they also miscalculate how much time they have, and then they have to goodbye. Oh yeah. Well, that's part of the fun of Joygasm, you know.
And then it sounded like at the end, instead of bind them, it sounded like you said, and in the darkness, buy them.
That's what I said.
B-U-Y?
Yeah. It was a play on words, Steve, because
Okay,
Embracer
well,
Group bought Lord of the Rings.
Okay, that makes sense. Because you said it so fast. I was like, what, did he want to say this? Or that? This? Or that? This? That? I'm going to go on. Whatever. It doesn't matter anyway. Okay, fine. Let's just go with it. Onward.
So, Lord of the Rings has been in the news quite a bit as of late. And I am very surprised by this, to be honest. We have Amazon, who have dumped a ton of money into their Lord of the Rings show that's going to be, is it coming out next month?
Yeah.
And then we also have a game that's coming out by, I want to say Private Division, which is a developer under 2K Games. And they apparently have been working with Weta Digital on the game itself.
Gollum.
But that game is not based on the film adaptation that Peter Jackson did. This is a standalone, like more based on the books, right?
Yeah.
So we have those two things going on. And then the news broke today about how Embracer Group, which is this huge company that is predominantly in the gaming space, apparently they made some sort of big deal to be able to have ownership over any Lord of the Rings video games moving forward, any Lord of the Rings movies moving forward. I'm not exactly 100% if it also includes any merchandise, but I mean, it sounds like they really like purchased the rights to the Lord of the Rings itself. Does that sound accurate to you?
So what it sounded like to me after reading a couple articles is that they purchased the rights to mainly like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit.
Okay.
But that's it. And so it's not like the entire Tolkien story book, everything, right? It's not Middle Earth everything. So like there's a couple books I have in my phone I have yet to read at all. The Silmarillion.
Okay.
Bilbo's Last Song.
Yes.
And there's a couple others. I can't remember what they are. But all that stuff, which is basically explaining like what the narrator says, like in the beginning of The Hobbit with the dwarves, or in the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring with the war and the forging of the ring.
Okay.
All that stuff is happening in the other books.
The other books.
So it sounds like from the article that they are saying they are buying the rights to basically what the movies made. So Lord of the Rings.
Are you sure?
That's what it said. It's buying the rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and that was it.
But was it only the films that have already been made, or was it more about like the IP itself to allow them to make new games, new movies? The IP. Okay, yeah. So it's a general IP. So it's not like they're bound by having to stay within the confines of like what Peter Jackson made.
Correct.
It just gives them like this huge control over all this stuff. I guess a question I have, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'll ask anyway, is what does that mean in terms of moving forward? Because you have the Tolkien estate that, I mean, I would assume, I hate to assume, but in this case I will, that they still have like some sort of ownership over the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, that sort of thing. But I don't know, based off the limited articles that we have been able to read, I don't think they really define that necessarily. I mean, did you see anything about that?
Not yet in the article. So what the articles were saying is that the IP rights were basically sold to a different movie company, started with a Z. I don't know. Anyway, so and that's when Peter Jackson was able to make all his film adaptations of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and then that's what Embracer Group bought, is the IP rights from this other film company. But the question is did the Tolkien estate first sell all of that IP stuff to the first movie company? Because if they did, I mean, that's quite a bit. But I mean, we got quite good movies out of it, but that's quite a sell-off.
Yeah, no, and see that's what I'm trying to ultimately figure out. Just because, I mean, it doesn't seem to really make a whole lot of sense, like why they would do that. So, like, if we look at like some of these articles, so this is on IGN. They talk about Lord of the Rings new owners are already talking about Gandalf and Aragorn spin-off movies. So it's interesting that they say Lord of the Rings new owners. If you go down a ways. Have only just been purchased by colossal holdings company Embracer Group, but the company is already talking about spin-off films. Let's see. So
which is kind of odd because if it's a spin-off film, okay, yeah, it's in the Middle-earth universe, I guess, if you want to call it that, but it's not necessarily, and the characters are from that same arena, but it's not exactly stemming from any part of the story. It's like almost, if you want to call it Marvel saying, hey, we want to, or another movie company saying, hey, we want to create our own Spider-Man story. We're going to use Spider-Man, but this has nothing to do with the comics like whatsoever.
And see, that tends to be more of a licensing deal where like, the movie studios have the licensing rights to basically, so many years you can make a Spider-Man movie, like to your point. But I'm trying to figure out like what all this stuff is, because like it says here, Embracer's acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises, which is interesting. They said the acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises. Are you familiar with, I mean, it sounds, excuse me. That sounds pretty interesting right here. Gives it the worldwide rights to motion pictures, video games, board games, merchandising, there you go, theme parks, and stage productions relating to the literary works of J.R.R. Tolkien. The majority of Lord of the Rings media to be released in the last few decades ultimately came from these rights, previously owned by the Saul Zaentz
That's
company?
What I was trying to remember. Yeah, Zaentz.
Which I've never heard of that company either, but apparently they were the ones that owned this property through licensing deals that resulted in the likes of Peter Jackson's film trilogies, various Lord of the Rings video games, and more. So, yeah, I guess I'm still trying to figure out like what is the significance between this, because you have this company that may or may not be affiliated directly with the Tolkien estate, or maybe the Tolkien estate is a separate independent entity altogether. Again, this is, as an outsider, I just don't have a ton of information, but it says, while the company therefore is the sole authority regarding potential movies based on Gandalf, Aragorn, and so on, the new projects would likely be fresh takes that aren't necessarily related to the characters or actors featured in the film trilogies. This is akin to the upcoming video game, The Lord of the Rings Gollum, which features the familiar characters, but as a version apparently based directly on the book's lore and not the movie interpretation. So,
which is, I think it's probably a good thing. I mean, You want your movie interpretation from Jackson just to stay by itself.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be like, okay, we're going to try our best to create an Andy Serkis Gollum and have it in the video game, and it's not going to be Andy Serkis. You know, I mean, I think they were like, for example, I think they tried something similar with the Square's Marvel game or the Avengers game that they had. We're like, okay, we're not going to have, you know, we're going to create our own Tony Stark, but it was too much like the Tony Stark that we saw in the movies. So we're like, okay, well, you don't have Robert Downey Jr., you have someone else trying to be Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
Playing Iron Man. It just didn't fit like whatsoever. And so if they have their own adaptation, well, great, because we've read the stories. I mean, in my imagination, I didn't necessarily hear Gollum, two completely different characters, you know, maybe look that way or talk that way. And so, I mean, my imagination of him might have been different than your imagination from him.
Yeah.
And also maybe Tolkien imagined him different than I imagined, you know, so you never know. But I think that's fine and fresh to create something that they think the books wanted to say and not the movies.
You know, it's interesting when I think about the efforts that Peter Jackson did with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit trilogy, in the sense that his vision was so well defined and has been celebrated for the last, 20 plus years. And so my mind instantly goes to that of what we've discussed with Marvel in the same way, where, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been in existence now for quite some time. It's been around, I want to say, for 12, 13 years, something like that. I can't remember precisely what it is, but there have been so many movies that have come out, and they've done such a good job of weaving this very nice ecosystem that it's difficult for someone like myself to see someone else play these roles. Like if they were to do like a hard reset and bring back like to your point, folks like Iron Man or Captain America, I don't know, I think there would need to be a certain amount of time to pass before approaching that, just because in my mind, like Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man, right? Chris Evans is Captain America. So I don't know, like to see that is going to be kind of interesting. Going back to Lord of the Rings though, it is interesting how once again, like there for some reason, there's just this really huge investment. And I understand. I mean, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan myself. I love the movies. I have not read the books yet, though. I still need to read the books. But it's interesting to me how there's just this all of a sudden, like there's this flux of very interested parties that are wanting to create Lord of the Rings stuff. Do you think that you would have a problem? Like, for instance, like in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, Andy Serkis did such, granted, we don't see Andy Serkis himself, but we see his motion captured performances and his voice, that sort of thing. Would you have trouble seeing a different depiction of Gollum? Or would that be more of a passable thing for you, as opposed to like seeing someone other than, I don't know, like Liv Tyler be Eowyn or so on and so forth?
As long as they're like respectful to the books and the lore and everything, I would be fine with a fresh approach. I think I'd have to really remind myself to disconnect from what I've seen in the movies. Because if the standard is there and I'm expecting them to sound this way and they may not necessarily sound that way, then, I don't want to base it basically on someone else's vision of the story. Yeah. So, but I would still be okay with it. I mean, there's plenty of great actors out there, and there's plenty of great directors who I think would be respectful. So that's the difference between, I think, the Rings of Power is that they're trying to say, okay, we are going to take the story and we're going to modernize it. And that's what I don't want. Like, I don't need a modern version of Tolkien. Tolkien is great the way it is, and I don't need anybody like taking their version of it and just trying to make a buck. Right. So that's why that's on the outs with me. But I'm definitely open to revisit some more Middle Earth.
Well, that's cool.
And play some more games. I mean, I'm down. Like I said, it doesn't have to be necessarily a masterpiece as long as they're respectful. That's like my bottom line. Yeah, I keyed on the video gaming side of things, because the games that have come out up to this point with Lord of the Rings,
there have been some decent ones, but overall, I have yet to actually see like a definitive Lord of the Rings game. Like, you play that. I mean, imagine like Elden Ring, but it's Lord of the Rings, something like that. You're like, it would just be insane. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that, just because Embracer Group now has so many game developers within its umbrella that, recently they acquired several companies like Square Enix and whatnot, or I should say from Square Enix. They acquired like Crystal Dynamics and some others. So their stable continues to grow with all these different developers, and especially when they are able to get the Lord of the Rings license, it does make me wonder. I mean, I'm very excited to think about, okay, what could they possibly make? Whether it's like an action adventure title, like maybe like Horizon Forbidden West, that kind of thing, where imagine you're like Viggo Mortensen's character, your Aragorn or your Legolas or whatever, have a God of War type of engagement, or maybe it's an RPG. Maybe like, you have some kind of, merry band, so to speak, where you're going through the storyline and you have those. There was a game that I played several years ago. I want to say EA Games made it.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah.
It was like a defense strategy game or something. It was kind of sort of in the same vein as like a StarCraft or a Warcraft game. At least the one I'm thinking of, where like it was kind of that isometric view, and like you had to get through all these different like narrative driven missions. But what are you thinking of?
It was more of an action. I mean, maybe an action RPG, but you take the role of almost everybody. I mean, you could take the role of, like you were saying, even Sam and Frodo you can take the role of. And they had different swords you can get, or different, I think cloaks you could get just by, getting a certain amount of points. You can unlock.
Was it third person, or was it like isometric on what I'm talking about?
It was third person.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that game. Did you like it?
It was fun. It wasn't great. Like there were, you could tell that maybe if they had some other people who were really into it in the, testing phase, that they would have maybe brought some more stuff to light, because I remember playing some certain bosses, and as soon as the boss did like an animation, like he was going to grab you, your character just went like this. I'm like, no, I'm trying to move. I have a couple seconds I can move. Let's just do something. And the character would just like stand there and wiggle like that. And then, of course, you get grabbed and squeezed or punched or whatever it was. I'm like, what are you going to do?
What would be awesome would be to have, do like a third person action RPG, but have it be like 4-player co-op or 6-player co-op. Basically, like however many characters are in the Fellowship, like that's how many people could be co-op. That would be pretty sweet. Going through the whole game like that.
You have a Gimli, an Aragorn, Legolas, and maybe give me Gandalf, and
Frodo.
And you have Frodo. Well,
Samwise Gamgee.
I don't know about you. Well, maybe. I mean, you have 3.
Well, they could all have their own abilities, right?
Yeah, 4 people playing hobbits. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be necessarily as fun.
This will be the death of the hobbits. Like you just hear that like on that. That's it. Like all the time.
Boromir,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
you can have a group of them.
Maybe unlock some of the more powerful characters.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would be excited to see something like that. And as I think about where the next gen hardware is in relation to even like Unreal Engine 5, there's just so much possibility that could be had within realizing that, going back to Elden Ring real briefly,
sure,
there is the Halig tree where I'm walking through, which is that has like all those different buildings that are within that massive tree. It does kind of remind me a little bit of some of the structures from Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, which I just was marveling over how that looked. I was thinking, my goodness, imagine just having like a Lord of the Rings game that was similar to a game like this. That would just be, instead of the lands between, you'd have Middle Earth.
That's right.
Does that make you excited, Steve?
Makes my palms sweat, Russ.
Possibilities.
Possibilities.
Make your pits sweat, Steve?
Sweat's so nice.
Is there any kind of merchandise or, there was quite a comprehensive list there of things that would enable them to make all kinds of different Lord of the Rings oriented products. Is there something else besides movies and games that caught your eye?
No.
No, you're just predominantly games and movies.
You know what I like though, Russ? This has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have my own like glass shelf display of like all the weapons from
all the weapons.
Yeah.
Would you want them to be nice and sharp and real, or just little replicas?
Little replicas, Russ? I want like full scale replicas.
Well, I mean,
it doesn't have to be like, oh, this thing's made out of cast iron. Oh, it's so heavy.
Well, what would you prefer?
But like a museum kind of piece, like something that looks very. That's so nice.
But I'm still a little hazy on what you would prefer. Like, would you want like a 1-to-1 scale replica that actually is made of metal and wood and who knows what do they do? Like, would you want Sting to glow whenever orcs are close?
I don't know if they can do that without just making it plastic, Russ. But that would be cool.
Don't doubt them, Steve. You never know.
That'd be cool.
Nerds have this thing where there's a will, there's a way. And believe me, there is a whole lot of will when it comes to Lord of the Rings.
So will of the wisps.
Yes. Indeed.
I wasn't. Yeah. Didn't have anything to do with that.
It's okay, Steve. I appreciate it nonetheless. Did you have any concluding thoughts about this big announcement?
I'm ready.
You're ready. So
I'm ready for some good stuff. Respectful stuff.
Respectful stuff.
Yes. Don't just exploit it. Don't just go, okay, we got it. Now let's make, squeeze every last drop out of it just for the fans just got to salivate. No, make something good. Make something of remembrance. Make something that we're going to be talking about, like we've been talking about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And of course, I talk about The Hobbit quite a bit. The books are great, Russ. You got to read the books.
For some reason, I thought I owned the books. I'm pretty sure I have the Lord of the Rings books. I can't find them either. Like
I gave you my books.
You did?
Yes, I had paper-bound copies, and I bought an extra hardcover copy. And I'm like, here, have the paper ones. Read them.
For some reason, I thought that I had also gotten the hardcover versions of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Apparently not.
I'm in this weird state where I can't find anything.
I'm in this weird state where I want statues.
I've got all this junk everywhere. And I don't know where anything is.
And I don't want to get rid of anything.
I have to hand it to Peter Jackson, though, just because he single-handedly brought the fantasy genre back into vogue when he made the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, there is so much there. It is such a love letter to those books, even though I have not read them, but I don't need to read them in order to be able to identify the fact, wow, there was a whole lot of hard work and effort and dedication. I mean, it was his passion project for all those years. And to this day, I mean, I recently watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy again, and everything about it is so. To me, it's perfect. It's like you watch it and you're like, there is not a single thing I would change about this.
This is true, Russ.
And we're just so lucky to be just these little fans, Steve. You know what I mean? These little fans get to enjoy all this kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I share your enthusiasm. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what it is that they are going to be making. It sounds like they're already looking at some standalone. I don't know if they're going to be movies or games, probably more movies.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all about that? About like if they did like a standalone Gandalf movie or a standalone Aragorn movie, something like that? Does that make you excited, or are you a little apprehensive about that?
A little apprehensive. I mean, the lore is deep. And if you want to know anything about it, I mean, and laugh, you can look at like a Stephen Colbert like clip because he knows so much about. He's read the books, and he really summarizes it very well. But there's a lot there, and what I would not want to happen is they go, okay, wouldn't it be cool if, and then that's like a committee decision. Like cool is a committee decision of, hey, let's have Gandalf, do this, that, or the other, or have his arc be different than what the fan base knows where he came from or what he did and how many years he's lived or whatever. That to me would not be so cool. They took too many creative liberties to change the lore.
I agree. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It is a head scratcher when it comes to the Amazon thing with the approach that they took, because you definitely want to be respectful to the source material. So we'll have to see. I mean, it may be in the next 2 years or so, we might start to see some announcements at the very least.
2020 Quattro.
Indeed. That wraps up this episode of Joygasm. We appreciate you hanging out with us. If you enjoyed this episode, we invite you to check out patreon.com/Joygasm, where you can enjoy exclusive perks and early access to the show. Not to mention, it continues financially helping us do Joygasm. Also, make sure you click on that subscribe button as well as that notification bell. That way you're not going to be missing a single solitary episode of Joygasm. It drops once a week, every week. And if you're so inclined, you can find us on social media. We're on every one of those main platforms. Do a search for @JoygasmTV. And last but not least, you can do a search for Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday night at 9:30 p.m. Central Time. We will be back, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, to hang out with all of you once more next week.